the next time you criticize the state of my room and how I live my life and where I choose to stick my gum,
or your stacks of bowls,
bottles, cups, whatever, where I choose to leave my soiled instruments, I want you to know we had a mutual friend, a mutual friend in high school who I went to his house one day.
Yeah, I remember who you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not going to name names, but I went to his house one day and I plopped down on his floor next to his bed, and he looks over to me and he says, Andrew, don't look underneath the bed. I was like, well, that's not at all suspect.
And that, of course, means that he wanted you secretly to look underneath the bed, or not so secretly.
I was like, what? Because, again, very, very weird. And after some poking and prodding, he reveals to me that after sex, instead of getting up and disposing of his used condoms in a receptacle, or hiding them, or doing, any of the normal human things you do with these, he took them and just dropped them down in a little crack between his bed and the wall, which were flush. And he did this over a period of months.
Welcome to Total Entertainment Forever, where we discuss all sorts of issues plaguing our world, including people like that do things like that and live like that. And I like to think that this guy who's living out of state now is no longer practicing this kind of behavior. But
I don't think
knowing him, I wouldn't be surprised if he's continuing to do so.
He has a child now, so he's probably abandoned use of contraceptives altogether. But I feel like there are a lot of this type of guy out in the world, and I think proof of that, especially a number of people on the internet complaining and campaigning for a change in the aesthetic of one Sonic the Hedgehog in his new movie.
Yeah. That's actually something I wanted to talk about, as you know. And this is continuing from our discussion from the previous episode, the Sonic the Hedgehog discussion.
The previous episode of Total Entertainment Forever.
This is a podcast where we discuss all the greats and all the notables as far as entertainment, as far as movies, music, etc. As far as all that is concerned, we cover it all. We talk about it all. And one of the main things that has been still corrupting the cultural landscape is this Sonic the Hedgehog talk. And unfortunately, because of that, we are once again going to be talking about it, just because I feel like there's an angle here that is not being discussed as often as I think it should. Since our last discussion about the trailer to the new Sonic the Hedgehog motion picture coming out this November, a few notable updates have happened that have been brought to my attention. Including, but not limited to, the fact that the internet outrage from the actual Sonic the Hedgehog design was met with some sort of pullback from the studios. The director, who is this guy that basically has not directed anything else previously except for like a few shorts, has said that they're listening to the fans. And now they're going to completely redesign Sonic the Hedgehog for this movie, coming out in less than 6 months. Surely nothing can go wrong. On one hand, terrific. I'm glad that the studios are listening to the fans, I guess. At the same time, though, I don't know if Sonic the Hedgehog fans are really people you want to be kowtowing to, considering the very large amount of internet videos of people making fools of themselves in the name of this character, considering the culture surrounding this character. These people are oafish and do not deserve to be listened to.
One of my favorite weird subsections on the internet is it's on DeviantArt, where it's people designing their own hedgehogs.
Yeah.
And they're always like these very edgy. It's like, this is Blade the Hedgehog.
Oh yeah.
He in his spare time plays in a nu metal band.
Which was basically what Shadow the Hedgehog was as well, but
it's Shadow, but somehow edgier, like with wallet chains and big old Jinkos.
Great.
That's my Hedgehog.
That's really what we need, is an edgier Shadow the Hedgehog. But yeah, no. The fan. I never really understood the very intense and fervent fan base that Sonic the Hedgehog has always gotten. I don't understand. If someone wants to explain it to me sometime, please go ahead. But I don't get it. It's a rodent that runs quickly. I don't.
Gotta go fast.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing that spectacular to me. But
Crash Bandicoot being the much superior running rodent.
Right, yeah, he's a running rodent. You're right.
Personal bias.
Does he talk? I don't remember. Does he?
No, he
doesn't.
goes,
okay. I guess that's where kind of,
like that.
yeah, just like that.
Yeah.
I guess that's what sets him apart Sonic is a fast-talking, wisecracking
Loves
lad.
chili dogs.
Yeah, he loves
Relatable.
chili. Literally just in that one cartoon, and this has just been an ongoing character trait in my mind for him as well. But one thing we didn't really discuss the design in the initial discussion that we had about the trailer. We were too distracted by everything else about it. But I don't think we even touched on it, honestly. And it is terrible. It is a sight for sore eyes, to be sure. But
That's not what that phrase means. Sight for sore eyes is something good. Like it's something ease the pain of the eyes. You don't have to Google it.
I'm going
you
to
can
Google.
take my word.
No.
This is not a literary podcast. All right, so he did end up Googling it, and I was correct. But keep going.
We'll cut that out. Anyway,
Eyesore is what you were looking for.
yes, it was real eyesore. You have to admit that's a very similar phrase, but yeah, it's bad. And because of this, because of the fan outrage, because of all the Chris Chans of the world creaming their shorts.
The literal fucking petition online.
Yeah.
Get a
Yeah.
fucking life, people.
Yeah. And then, yes, exactly. Just imagine if people actually put their energy towards something of worth. But because of this, the director said they're changing it. Good publicity for the movie now, all of a sudden, for the most part. And what still catches the ire of these fans who don't really realize how the industry works and have really no knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes. What they don't realize is this, and this is really what I want to discuss here, is the fact that the animators that are going to have to do this are almost certainly going to have to work overtime and not be compensated for it. And that's not something that people talk about a lot or really think about probably very often, considering that the animators are basically, they're sweatshop workers of Hollywood in many ways. And this new hashtag that has emerged from this gotta fix fast hashtag seems awfully facetious in this context, especially since a lot of these people are directly blaming the animators for the poor design choices to begin with, and that's just patently wrong. These things are always run through various committees, various marketing committees. They always cook up these designs that the animators have to basically bring to life.
Yeah,
they're not the
comes
ones.
to them last.
Exactly.
Like it's storyboarded first.
It goes through.
There are actual character designers in charge of this.
It goes through probably many groups of people before even getting to the animators, before getting to the lackeys that have to basically breathe life into these monstrosities. And I really don't know what the marketing angle was behind this design of the character. It's not like it's like a more realistic design. It still looks very weird and unsettling next to like real life people. So there's nothing appealing about it. But the animators, they had to go through with it because it's their job to. A lot of these animators were already involved with various Sonic properties that existed beforehand. So it's not like they don't know what fans expect to see when they look at Sonic the Hedgehog. So it's not their fault in this case. And now we're going to see, I'm worried that we're going to see a situation where these animators are going to have to, like I said, work maybe 120 hours a week in order to get this stuff done, and probably be compensated very minimally for the intense amount of work that they're going to put into this, if they're even compensated at all. And if we can put enough attention to this, because most of the information I got involving this was a video by Jack Saint that is referring to the hashtag gotta fix fast, and the video is called hashtag gotta fix fast bad by Jack Saint. Easy title. Look it up if you're interested in the subject. It's pretty good, and he talks about the context of of animation in Hollywood at large. And that's the thing, because even if the animators for this particular project are treated well, that is not the norm here. We're talking about creative types that have been abused pretty much since the dawn of animation in America as a mainstream source of entertainment, because the animators in Disney were striking in the early 40s. And there's all sorts of atrocities that have happened ever since, and things have only barely gotten better, because we have an industry that is so horrifically abused, the people in it, in so many levels, for everything from the way they're paid to the hours to basically everything between. They are paid not in the same way that most other creative types in Hollywood are paid. Most of them are paid, by the hour, And they are not. They are usually given a certain amount of money, and they're basically told, okay, you have to do this in a certain amount of time. And obviously with movies, things are always changing, things are always shifting, either because of studio notes, reshoots, all that stuff, or maybe during filming they decide to change the script up, blah blah. There's all sorts of stuff that happens when filming a movie. There's no like formula to it. So a lot of the times the money that they get for what they're going to animate is not sufficient enough for them to actually finish the product as the product ended up being by the end of production. They are usually not paid any more than what they're given, and if they are, it's baby crumbs. It's breadcrumbs. It's nothing. And the other thing is, with a lot of these studios, the studios are very often chasing after these sort of tax incentive locations. So these animators kind of have to follow along with the companies being placed in different states, etc., etc. And that kind of prevents them from living any kind of anything that's even remotely resembling like an actual life. I was watching this video that Jack Saint actually linked about the Life of Pi studio, which was called Rhythm and Hues, one that since went bankrupt. And we're looking at people who were living in hotels and moving from hotel to hotel. They're not doing this for the money, and I'm very fine white knighting for them, because I just knowing more about this, it just seems like there's so much of the modern cinematic landscape is built entirely on animation studios, animators, and all these other creative types. Every single Marvel movie, almost every single blockbuster from the past 20 years or so has involved heavy work and blood, sweat, and tears from these people. And they are never given the attention that is. Or the only time that these people are actually given attention is when the animation is kind of distractingly bad, like perhaps at the end of Black Panther or whatever. And usually the reason it looks bad is because they're underfunded for the same reasons. Black Panther is a situation where a lot of money was kind of put into Infinity War, which was being pretty much made at the same time, and so they had to kind of work with what they had, which unfortunately led to a climax that was a little PS2, which has been often discussed, but yeah. And I don't know, I just kind of want to put forward this this plea here to not make these animators work. Just push the film back. Honestly, nobody's really it's not like anyone's dying for it to come out.
Clamoring for this.
Nobody's clamoring for this.
No one
movie.
asked for this. No one's excited about it.
Exactly. People are maybe cautiously optimistic at best. The movie is probably going to be okay at best. Let's be completely honest with ourselves here.
Yeah,
and that's the best case
scenario. Reviews when this comes out. Movie is middling. Jim Carrey is fine. Is hailed as the only.
Yeah, it's like, oh great, you like '90s Jim Carrey? You can watch this film. You'll probably have a decent time. Yeah, and it's just insulting.
That's the thing. If this movie's going to be bad, it's going to be bad whether Sonic looks accurate to his past depictions or whether he looks how he did here.
Exactly.
It's not going to alter the quality.
Right.
It's nitpicky.
Movies are a huge collaborative effort. They really are, and a lot of people fall into the habit, including me sometimes, of just blaming the director or an actor or whoever for a movie being bad. It's never as simple as that. And it seems like, as far as team members of the filmmaking industry, animators always get the short end of the stick. I highly recommend this short documentary about the collapse of the Rhythm and Hues animation studio while they were making Life of Pi. This was an animation studio that existed for 20 years, and they went bankrupt. 300 or so people were laid off, and they ended up winning an Oscar for their for Life of Pi 11 days after bankruptcy. And they and even while they were winning the Oscar, the Academy was so flippant towards them that they literally were playing the music while the head guy was doing his speech 45 seconds in. They were playing and the reason why, let's not kid ourselves, is because at the time there was also a strike going on outside of the Academy Awards during that year, the year 2013, and I'm pretty sure that the Academy probably just thought that something was going to be mentioned, and then that's just par for the course for most industries. Any kind of dissent is going to be met with utmost hostility. That's, like I said, across the board. But I think it's a very specific type of ill with these animation studios, because the amount of work that they have to put in, that they put into it. They have to sleep at the studios a lot of the times, and this is all first-hand accounts I'm talking here. This is not speculation. And even worse is when they're outsourced over to like companies over in Japan, where people will literally die of exhaustion. Like somehow Japan has even worse working conditions as far as the animation studios than here in America.
Work ethic over there in general.
Well, it's insane, but and that's not even a compliment. The work ethic, human beings should not have to work this much into it.
And it's like ingrained in their culture. It's
insane. Yeah, exactly. That's not the way, like, physically that human beings should live or can live a lot of times. We're meant to live. Yeah, these people deserve lives, man. I'm trying to watch. I don't know. Like, I think there's something that can be done here. Hopefully, it's probably going to involve all sorts of, I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you saw recently, maybe just a small, shimmer of light here is that the BoJack staff actually are moving to unionize. So hopefully that sort of kicks.
And that's really what we need. That's what this really points towards how important it is for these unions to exist and be strong. Because when they're not, then this kind of thing happens, and unfortunately, it's always going to happen if there's no bargaining power on the side of the creatives. Because this is a system, unfortunately, where maximum profit is the name of the game.
Always.
Yeah, maximum profit. The riches are almost never shared. We're making, like, movies are making more money now than they have been, like, forever, and people are still being underpaid somehow, because studio execs and other key members in the industry are always like, okay, great, we're making more money now, however, all that money's gonna go to me.
Yeah, Endgame is literally $1 billion movie, and Disney workers are still not making a livable wage.
Which is absolutely insane. And another, just real quick, before, there was another thing that happened with Bohemian Rhapsody, where one of the animation studios that worked on that, Halo VFX, also went bankrupt. A lot of the people were owed money. There's all sorts of situations where this happened. Sausage Party, remember that film? If you do not remember what that film is, that's a movie where a bunch of food fuck each other at the end. And immaculately animated, though, and all these people were basically, a lot of people were basically harassed to not speak out against the working conditions that they were put in. And people who did, because they were overworked as well, and people who did were basically blacklisted from the industry, and they were not even credited in the final product, which is absolutely insane. And that's probably an enormous reason as to why it seems so difficult for these people to actually, organize and stuff against this monumentally insane system that is grinding them to dust at any possible given opportunity. And it is difficult, I know, but I feel like something has to be done eventually, or else I don't even know what's going to happen. Like, there's not going to be, there's just, I don't know. it's really disheartening to see.
This is, like you said, people don't do this for the money, so I feel no matter how bad this gets, people are always going to be looking for these jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I guess that's the problem. Everyone's expendable.
Yeah, any sort of like movement's gonna have to, I think, come from the outside.
Yeah. It's gonna take a lot of work, and this has to happen on various industries as well.
It's worth noting this is also very common in the video game industry.
Yeah,
it's the same thing with the really harsh deadlines, like the 60 to 80-hour work weeks, and the very minimal credit that they receive. And the Gamergate people, or whatever, you internet nerds, instead of worrying about like the lack of cleavage in the new Mortal Kombat, how about you pay a little bit more attention to the horrible working conditions of the people producing these games.
Oh no, I mean they're always worried about one thing, it seems. But it's just so sad to see, because now we're gonna have like Bohemian Rhapsody made like $1 billion worldwide. It got tons of critical reception, and these people who were laid off and were not owed their due, they're probably not going to get it. And then most of the money is probably going to go, a good chunk of the money is going to go to Bryan Singer, who did not even fully direct the film, and also he's just going to use that money to buy champagne to feed the 12-year-olds at his pool parties. So where does it end? These people deserve your attention. I highly recommend watching this video. I highly recommend sharing it and looking into all the other various atrocities that have been happening to the animation industry and other industries in the entertainment business at large. It's an interesting topic to me, and who knows, maybe you find it interesting too. And it's worth looking into. And I just wanted to kind of touch base a little bit with that because, like I said, this is an often discussed subject. This Sonic the Hedgehog fellow, and it is not often enough where it is discussed on this angle because it's an important one as well.
It's important to note that your favorite content does not appear out of thin air. There's always someone behind the scenes working on it.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you got to pull back the curtain and make sure they're also doing okay.
Yeah, these people, they're carrying the entire movie industry on their backs, basically. When you think about Titanic, a movie that we have discussed, I think, 3 podcasts in a row.
Not we, you,
me.
Ham. You forced it in here. So I have to think about it.
It comes up naturally because it's an incredibly important film. But anyway, yes, that movie had 300 special effects shots. But compare that to now. All right, where things have been bumped up to such a level. How many effects, just off the top of your head, do you think Avengers: Infinity War had?
I mean, God, if you just look at, there were no practical effects in that film.
No, barely.
That is 98%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whether it's like Iron Man's suit, it's the fucking web swinging, it's de-aging people, which is like a huge trend now.
Yeah, that's good.
Very unnerving. Yeah, that movie is like 98%.
It was 3,000 special effect shots. 3,000. All that have to be completely rendered, completely worked on. Yeah, and it's. I just want to kind of tip my hat to these people because they're never getting the credit they deserve, and that's really all there is to it.
All right, and then we're gonna move on to a new segment where we take a trip down to the trailer park and discuss all the newest and most exciting teasers, starting this week with Midsommar.
That's right, Andrew. We are going to be talking about Midsommar, the new film from the director of Hereditary, Ari Aster, and we are very excited to talk about it because the new trailer just came out. And
so, going off these first 2 trailers, I get a vibe very similar to his first film, Hereditary, which I think we've touched on in the past here. The tone and the vibes are very much the same. On the surface, everything seems kind of quaint or whatever. Prior to this, in Hereditary, it was just families, chilling, bowling, maxing, relaxing, and in this one, it's some people having a good time at a festival in Sweden, but just underneath the surface there's something lurking and very menacing. But the main difference, really a very glaring difference between the two, is the color palette that's being utilized. With Hereditary, everything was very dark, very toned down. But for Midsommar, it's bright spring colors.
It's very pastel.
Yeah.
It's a pastel horror film, it looks like, which I think is incredibly interesting. And judging from the new trailer that we saw, it seems like not only is it going to be similar in tone and in composition and in sound, to Hereditary, because we did notice that the soundtrack sounded very much like the very kind of minimalist and kind of screeching soundtrack that we heard in Hereditary.
From Colin Stetson. Check out his solo career, all very good stuff. Experimental saxophone work.
Right. And not only does it seem like it's going to be similar in that and kind of in that area, but it seems like it's going to be similar to Hereditary in the sense that it's covering some aspect of society from the angle of a horror film, but also commenting it on some level as well. Because Hereditary was basically about family, and it was about family trauma and how it can kind of extend to different generations. And to me, just judging from the trailer of Midsommar, the new one that is, which kind of has a more concrete explanation of what the plot is, it seems like it's going to be saying a little bit of something about modern relationships. If I had to guess, I would say that the movie is probably the brightness of the film is very purposely that way to mask some kind of horrific underbelly. And I think to me, and this is just a guess because I haven't seen and I don't really know much about it, but to me it seems like that is also a commentary on how in certain relationships things seem cheery and kind of really well going on the surface, but when you actually get to the meat of the relationship, it's actually just pure horror. It's pure unpleasantness, and that's what I think we're going to be getting from this film. I could be wrong. What do you think, Andrew, of that reading of the trailer?
I'll go with it.
Sure,
That's
yeah,
fair
no, I
enough.
think
a lot of speculation, but
Yeah.
it's not too much of a reach, I don't think.
No. Yeah, and it's just a guess. It is basically just speculation, but just judging by what he had to say about family in Hereditary, I think it's going to be interesting anyway. Either way, it seems like there's going to be some sort of occultic elements, which were also present in Hereditary, and I'm always down for that. I'm excited.
Right, and that will be out July 3rd.
July
So
3rd.
keep your eyes open for that. Speaking
In the midsummer.
of cults, the second trailer we're going to be talking about today, Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Right, I can't tell if you're referring to his fan base as the cult, or if or if you're referring to the fact that it's about the Manson family.
I'll leave it open-ended.
Okay, yeah, no, right here, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a movie that's coming out also in July. It's the is it the ninth feature
movie.
film
Yep.
from our favorite connoisseur of ladies' feats.
You know he plasters his name at the very beginning of the trailer. That's the first thing you see. The ninth film from Quentin Tarantino.
That's true.
The man is definitely not lacking in ego.
No, it's true. He's very much up his own ass. We don't talk about him much on this podcast, just because I think it's almost purposeful on our end because we don't want to be labeled as
film bros,
which we're going to be labeled anyway. Honestly, we should just embrace it. Have you seen the movie Donnie Darko?
I've heard of it.
Awesome. Hey man,
see, now it's so deep.
You ever smoke weed and watch Donnie Darko? It's
frequently
pretty awesome, dude. Anyway, yeah, no, but we actually do like Tarantino, despite the fact that we're simultaneously disgusted by him, and I just think he's just a kind of a cringe lord a lot of the times. Despite all this, and despite his very obvious foot fetishism, which again, and this has been often discussed, but he puts it so out there that it's very difficult.
He's an auteur, all right.
He's an auteur of something. I know that.
I'll let it slide.
no, I'm not complaining either. It's just like he's very open about it, so there's no reason to ignore it. Is what I'm saying. And this film is going to. It looks like it's going to be about the trailers so far. Both of them have been very light on plot, which I'm fine with. It seems like it's going to be about the exploits of Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, who plays a sort of dwindling actor. An actor whose career is dwindling, and his sort of too cool for school stuntman, played by Leonardo and Brad, respectively. And it seems like it's just going to be following them just doing stuff for the most part until eventually they end up meeting with Charlie Manson and his girls. But that's really all I'm getting as far as plot from the trailer. Otherwise I'm just getting the usual Tarantino flair, the usual style, the usual banter, just kind of put into the setting of Hollywood, circa late 1960s, which is something that I'm surprised he has not tried to explore in the past. But I'm excited to see his take on it. The film seems fun, seems breezy. I'm excited to see what they do with the Manson thing. I'm a little worried. I'm a little hesitant about it, just by virtue of what happens to the character of Sharon Tate in real life. But who knows? Like, what he does with history, he plays very fast and loose with it. Who knows what he's going to do? Either way, I'm definitely interested. What do you think?
No, same. Yeah, no, this is two things I'm very fond of, and that's Quentin Tarantino films, and also Charlie Manson.
Oh yeah, we're big Charlie Manson fans here.
Another thing we don't talk about too much is we are big true crime fans.
Just as embarrassing.
Not like the kind of true crime fan who's like, yo, I want to fuck Dylan Klebold or whatever.
No, I don't think either of us have ever said that. You can not on mic, so you can write that to us.
Right? Yeah, but Charlie Manson, the whole Manson family story, very interesting, and I'm not expecting that to be like the main focus here. I'm more expecting it to just sort of be like happening. Concurrently to the main plot line, which I think will be about Leo and Brad Pitt. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how he handles that.
Sure, I mean, it's not going to be very classy, I would imagine. But there's been plenty of exploitation films about Manson in the past, so we'll just see what happens. I'm sure it's going to be interesting either way. I'm sure Charlie Manson will have some kind of Tarantino-like monologue, not unlike Leo's monologue in Django Unchained, where he talks about skull science.
He'll definitely
it could be
suck
pretty
some
interesting.
toes.
Yeah, there'll be some villainous toe sucking from Charlie Manson. I'm sure Tarantino maybe even finds a little himself in Charlie Manson in some ways. Well, And we'll see what he does with all this. One thing I noticed about it, and this is just kind of something on the side that I want to talk about, because I was watching the movie 12 Monkeys the other day. Brad Pitt's persona, his sort of acting style has shifted since the 90s, like, a lot, while Leo's has kind of remained a little more consistent, in my opinion, because in movies like 12 Monkeys, or in Seven, he's more, like, erratic and kind of, goofy and stuff. While it's in the 2000s, he was just kind of remodeled to be like a real cool, calm, and collected presence.
Quick counterpoint: burn after reading.
That's true. That is him kind of coming back to it. But most of the movies, like if you go since 2000s, like it's Mr. and Mr. Smith and stuff. Mr. and Mrs. That would have been a much more progressive movie, but for that time. But Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like all that stuff. Even in Tarantino's other film, *Inglourious Bastards*, and it seems like in this movie as well, he's just kind of just really cool and relaxed all the time.
Very loosey, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of prefer Brad Pitt when he's a little more fast and loose. He's a little more crazy. I don't know, but that's me. I still like him when he's in his other mode as well. But we'll just see what happens, because the movie's gonna be 3 hours. There's gonna be plenty of opportunities for things to go wrong. But I'm very excited to see it anyway. And it's gotten pretty good buzz so far from cons and whoever else has seen it already, but that's going to be coming out July
26th.
26th. So keep an eye out for that. I'm sure you will, because Tarantino, everyone has an opinion about him. He's just one of those guys.
All right, so now we're gonna pull on out of the trailer park and head to the main attraction here. 1970s Japan for our film today, Nick.
Yes. Picture, if you will, a singular work of art. What happens when you mix up Mario Bava, Evil Dead, and Scooby-Doo, put them in a blender, and add a vial of Primo acid before clicking Paris? That, my friends, is what you would probably find if you looked at the movie Hausu from 1977. A movie that is so ridiculous, so manic and weird and bizarre that it really, truly needs to be seen to be believed. It's probably one of my favorite films. It's a singular experience. And Andrew, would you describe the plot to this film before we delve deeper into what makes this movie what it is?
Quick rundown. 6 girls go on vacation. Six schoolgirls go on vacation to visit the aunt of one of the gals who lives in a very secluded house in the middle of the woods, and they find out, much to their dismay, that there's some spooky shit going on in that house.
Oh, there is.
And so we watch these 6 gals, each of whom is sort of an archetype of like coming-of-age films, sort of.
And they are named after their own archetype.
Yeah, literally named
which
after.
I find interesting.
Yeah, Kung Fu, martial artists, who would have guessed. Melody, really good at playing instruments.
Gorgeous, just, she's pretty.
Yeah.
And stuff.
And, we just sort of watch them try to deal with the shenanigans that go on in this haunted house.
Yeah, that is basically the crux of the film. And from that baseline description, people can hear it, and probably maybe they would have certain pictures in their head of what the film is. But if you're not familiar with this movie, you're almost certainly wrong, because while the plot may seem deceptively simple and deceptively cliched, well, let's not forget that this was in '77, which was before many of these types of films, before many of these types of plots have gone into, as popular and as overused as they are now. But this director, whose name is, and excuse me if I butcher this, and I probably will, Nobuhiko Uebayashi. That sounded good. But he has a background in experimental films in the 70s, and eventually, for some reason, Japan decided that he would be a prime person to direct commercials, and he did. And this was actually his first film, produced by the very famous production company in Japan known as Toho, most known for things like Godzilla, many of the Akira Kurosawa productions, and most recently Detective Pikachu. And they decided in the year of 1977 that they wanted a person to make a movie similar to what the U.S. came out with a few years earlier with Steven Spielberg's Jaws. And with this in mind, they hired Obayashi, probably based on his commercial work, I'm assuming, to make a spook fest and this is what he ended up coming home with.
Right,
So,
and then actually I read also that he was hardly like a first choice. They couldn't find anybody to direct the script.
So they
because
just- yeah.
they thought, like, a lot of directors thought they would like end their career. So-
yeah, and it's because it's pretty wild, and I'm glad, and just imagine this being your first film. Like, this is his premiere film. He's been making movies ever since then too, and he's still alive. So that, to me, that's impressive. And I'm very curious about what his other movies look like. I have to assume that there was probably some shift in style to a little less maximalist over the years, while sort of tastes have changed and whatnot. But because you couldn't make something like this now, not even in Japan, even with all the cultural differences in mind. There's no way that someone in Japan can make a movie like this today. There's absolutely no way. It's a film that apparently Obayashi had the script was sort of written kind of with his 12-year-old daughter, and a lot of her input was taken to heart and added into the film. That's why you have such bizarre scenarios as a piano eating a woman alive, and an evil cat that vomits blood, and also just a lady being smothered with sheets,
like
and
mattresses
bedding
and sheets, yeah.
and all that. And we have other things like a head in a well that's floating and then bites a woman right on the ass,
right on the rump,
on the rump. Takes a big chunk out. It's all this stuff. I feel like you almost have to be a child to come up with it, but
You're either like a child or like an emotionally stunted adult,
or a genius, or all three.
Yeah.
But it's truly something that does need to be seen to believe, because the way these bizarre images and just amazing ideas are come to life is also very appropriately in the most confusing and like I said earlier, maximalist way possible. A lot of the techniques used in this film are very overdone and very lavish because of the amount of money that was put behind the film. There's a lot of outdoor scenes that are actually shot indoors, interior sets with these beautiful little matte paintings in the background. You see a lot of usage of early digital effects, as well as cutouts and other things like that. Sort of, what do you call it when what do you call the effect of cutting magazine things out? And
it's like superimposing.
Yeah, they're superimposing. Well, no, I'm talking about like when you cut something out of a magazine and make art with it.
Collage.
Yeah, there's a lot of collage type effects going on. For instance, when you get a glimpse of the sort of hell world that these women are put into, it's just kind of like a collage effect of their various body parts and their heads just kind of floating around amongst like paintings of all these different ghouls and stuff, and like these weird like psychedelic images happening in the background.
One could say that was a precursor to a scene from another film we talked about, the scene from Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse. Throwing through the dimensional loops.
I would say that if you're going to label films as psychedelic, both of those could probably roughly be put into those parameters, maybe. Not that I would compare them in literally any other way.
No, that's literally the single similarity.
But that's it. But it is very interesting. And I do want to talk about the main characters of this film, the women that you mentioned before. They, like you said, are pretty much primarily defined by one single characteristic. Like you said, there was Kung Fu, there was Gorgeous, there was a girl named Prof who was very smart. There was a girl named Fantasy who just dreamed a lot, and there was unfortunately also this poor girl named Mac who they bullied because she just liked eating. And I felt most bad for her. She was like, even by her friends, there was no escape from the terror of life.
It's fine. She seemed
happy.
She took it all in stride.
That's true. I mean, that's the thing. All these girls, I have to assume that maybe these nicknames were probably something they gave to each other, because they all seemed to just own it. Basically, there was absolutely no pushback against them being defined by this single characteristic. But I have a feeling that it's more supposed to be metaphorical, and it's supposed to be more about how when you're young, you almost kind of define yourself by something that's not that complicated, by usually maybe it's one or two separate things. And it's also very common for adults to put similar labels on you as well. And I feel like it's kind of more a commentary about that. And that's the thing about this movie, because I do think while it's a romp the whole way through, and I do mean the whole way through, there is absolutely no slowing down. There's always some kind of insane like camera trickery or some ridiculous set piece that's happening. I feel like there are certain layers to it that I haven't even explored until recently when I started reading into this film. And I do kind of want to talk about that. Unless you had something else to say, we can come back to it as well. But
yeah, we'll just dive into this.
Sure. Because I watched a video essay actually today by a person named Koganada, yes. A video essay by Koganada who kind of discussed how the film was sort of about the fallout from the nuclear bomb that hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, let me justify that very quickly.
Please do, because I didn't really pick up on that.
I mean, I knew that you would say that.
Yeah.
And let me justify myself, because I don't like sort of like theories that are just completely based on nothing, like based on like mathematics or stuff like that Room 237 business.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, if you rewind the movie this amount and you pause it this amount, you see Stanley Kubrick's face in the clouds winking at you, and that stuff isn't really interesting to me.
Also, it's just very obvious for like an American to be like, oh, this Japanese movie definitely has to be about.
But here's the thing, though. This is more not based on some American what he's kind of putting onto it using his own cultural standards. It's the director actually says in an interview, which is available on the Criterion release, which I have in my hands right now. It's very beautiful. It's very nice. There's an interview where he talks explicitly that that's what the movie's about. He says that all of his friends died. Basically, all of his close friends died when we dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I think, while very subtle, I think there are certain things within the film that kind of justify this reading as well. For instance, the aunt character, the aunt who owns the house that all the girls go to, she is sort of kind of living alone because all the people she knew died from World War II, including her fiance, who never returned from battle. You see, and you do see sort of images, very, very quick flashing images of the war, including like a 2-second image of the bomb, of the explosion of the bomb, while which you see appropriately, like with the flashing colors, and then one of the kids in the background is saying, "Oh, it looks like cotton candy," which I find interesting, because to me the movie and what this video essayist puts forth is that it's kind of about how, and in some ways kind of similar to Hereditary, which we discussed earlier. It's kind of similar how this sort of trauma is passed along through different generations. Because when we look at the girls at the beginning of the film, they're obviously very jovial and very happy, very unburdened by the troubles of the world, and this is kind of reflected through the use of very vibrant commercial aesthetics that are used in the beginning of the film. But once they go into this house owned by the aunt, this house that is made evil because of trauma, then that's when the bad things start happening. That's when they are consumed by these different demonic forces that are at work in this house. These different ghoulish nightmares that start popping up, pretty much conjured by the aunt and her trauma. And I feel, and there's a certain feeling at the end to me, which kind of is sort of a somber feeling at the end when all the girls do end up being consumed by the house, and the aunt ends up, I guess, taking over the body of her niece, Gorgeous. And you see this at the end. There is sort of a somber feeling where once the trauma from generations past do kind of ending up meeting with the sort of listless and happy-go-lucky gang of kids, then things start going wrong, and they are eventually consumed by the trauma. And there isn't really any hint of any kind of joviality left within the film, and it's all just it's all gone. It's all gone, and the Gorgeous character is a husk of what she used to be. All of her friends are dead, and she is sort of there to pass on this same trauma to the character that ends up entering the house at the end, which I believe was her dad's
her
fiance.
dad's newest.
Yeah. Anyway, but and to me that's I think that's a pretty appropriate reading in some ways. What do you think?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of interesting because it kind of plays into a quote here that I found. Some things are so horrific that truth isn't sufficient for the truth. The only way is to create fiction so outlandish that it approximates the absurdity of true horror. And to me, that's reflective of and that's a quote by Tim O'Brien, by the way. And to me, that's reflective of how just insane and absurd this movie is. So intentionally sort of campy and outlandish, as this quote says. It's, I think, is an attempt by the director to sort of mirror the outlandish absurdity of the idea that we can just create a machine that in a flash, in a blink of an eye, thousands of people can die. And for what? What's the reason? There isn't really a good reason for it. And that kind of absurdity cannot really truly be captured in a nonfiction story, I don't think. Like, it's just... or in a story that's sort of, meant to be more realistic, I think.
Like straightforward.
Exactly.
More direct.
Exactly. To me, that's a really interesting... that's an interesting way of creating a movie about something like this. Something as horrible as the bombings of these two cities and the mass amount of civilians that die because of it. It's I think it's interesting, and it's kind of it's strangely reminiscent, but not exactly, of a different version of kind of dealing with the fallout and the turmoil from these bombings, also from Toho, the Godzilla movies, or at least the early films. Those were very much political approximations of the anxieties going on at the time, kind of personified by a monster like Godzilla. And it's different, but I think it is interesting that these two movies were released from Toho about 20 years apart, which means that even after so many years, like, it's all still there. And even if the younger generations don't really feel it as harshly, it's still kind of lingering there, kind of almost waiting to manifest itself.
That's ingrained in their culture. That's not something as far as America goes. We look at World War II, and it's just like it was like this really noble thing. It was just something that happened, and
because we were far away from it.
Yeah, like we were able to like sweep it under the rug. There were no direct consequences for us, but something as horrific as the nuclear bombing, there's no sweeping that under the rug.
Yeah, exactly. We're just so fucking, like, we're so swaggering, and really the only reason was literally just because it was happening in another place.
we're so insulated from any of the military actions we've taken over literally our entire history, or since 1812 was the last time there was like war on U.S. soil.
I mean, I would say that 9/11 was perhaps the only modern example of this kind of thing happening on our soil, and obviously that's had all sorts of monstrous effects on our culture and society as well too, and who knows what's going to happen in the future because of it as well. And obviously there was the bombing of Pearl Harbor that initially even got us into the conflict in the first place, but I think those are different. I think the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which while it's still tragic, is very different from the idea of what happened to Japan because of the two bombs. I think that those are
in scope. They're not even close.
Scope-wise, they're tough to compare. We really did throw the baby out with the bathwater when retaliating against the Japanese there, I think. I just thought that was a really interesting reading of this kind of outwardly goofy film, tonally. But I did also catch the sort of somber ending, and I wanted to bite into that, and I feel like this does that. This reading here, that I discovered, and I just wanted to share that, and kind of because in the context of the movie, it does change it sort of when looking into it. But because it's very easy to miss that kind of subtext in movies like this, just because. To me, the movie, like, on its face value, is basically just Evil Dead before Evil Dead in many ways. Evil Dead 2 especially, which I think, I don't know, I can't confirm whether Sam Raimi saw this film, but it's, if he did, very obviously had an influence in Evil Dead 2, which is also just a wacky, outward horror comedy where everything's thrown at the wall.
Yeah, because if you like the first time I watched this, it's so absurd and it's so wacky is a really good word to describe it. It's so like cartoony that you don't even think to look underneath the surface. Like it doesn't cross your mind because you're too distracted by like the fucking the rapid cuts and the goofy animations.
Yeah, because literally almost every shot is like meant to like call attention to itself in some way.
Yeah.
And every effect is very obviously an effect, but like in a terrific way.
The closest thing I could think of in terms of a comparison is how this is shot with like rapid cuts is like it gave me it was very reminiscent of like old Power Rangers cartoons.
There's a little bit of
not
there,
cartoons, old Power Ranger shows. Yeah, where everything's just like rapid and meant to like call attention to the action, and it's,
same
like,
kind of tone too, where people talk in a really like weirdly kind of performative way all the time.
Everything's like tuned up to 10, like at all times.
At all times, yeah. There's absolutely no chill, and this movie, this movie is no chill incarnate because I can't think of another movie that kind of keeps going with these kind of stylistic flourishes and gusto.
A lot of gusto.
Like all throughout. What do you think of because this character just popped in my head, and this sort of falls into the sort of Mario Bava thing, but there's certain parts of it that kind of remind me of Bram Stoker's Dracula, just sort of in the way that that movie Ford Coppola was trying to use as many kind of older film techniques as possible, and like he throwing it basically all there, as much as he could possibly do. And there was certain times where the tone kind of verged on silly and outlandish as well. I don't think it went full house, but I think there's maybe a little bit of that touched upon it. What do you think of that? Because I know you are a fan of that film.
Yeah, I could see it. There are definitely some moments in Dracula that are definitely a lot campier.
Yeah,
than maybe you would
there's
expect.
Some fucking campy moments. Keanu Reeves' presence in it is
just his accent
is very campy.
It's
like
very
I'm starting to think maybe it was that was on purpose, but maybe I'm just trying to give my boy Keanu some credit when it's not deserved.
Tom Waits' character is very over the top. Anthony Hopkins, same thing.
Anthony Hopkins is going for it in that movie. He's very over the top. Gary Oldman, even though his performance is perhaps a little more multifaceted, when he is like going for it in that film, he is definitely going
heavy on the melodrama.
Very heavy on the melodrama, just like this film at points, which when it's not being melodramatic, it's being outwardly comedic, or it's being extreme like in the horrific sense as well. And I think there's a little bit of that in there as well. And it probably also comes from the sort of Mario Bava and sort of maybe Dario Argento thing too, which I think both these films are kind of maybe grabbing from. It's hard to say more for Hausu, since it's difficult to say what it's being influenced by or what it's influencing at any time, just because of its place in history and the fact that we didn't really get it until like 2009. Like us American audiences didn't really get it until 2009, and then Criterion released it in 2010. But I think there's a little bit of that, a little bit of the old Italian, very colorful Italian horror sort of techniques and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, because the special effects, as far as the color palette goes, very in your face. It's like very bright, like reds and purples. Just,
yeah. And I think Suspiria has a little bit of that too.
Yeah, like
if you watch that,
psychedelic colors.
Sure, yeah. I think it's cool. I think it's a really underutilized way of doing horror, because it's been so like firmly established as horror tropes as being, you have to look wise, it has to be gothic, it has to be dark, and that kind of thing. And I think that's good if utilized correctly. But I think there's a very underrated presence of kind of more colorful horror. And it looks like we might be seeing a little more of that, although in a very different context, in Midsommar. But we'll see what happens in the future, because I know this movie is garnering more and more popularity every day, it seems, and I'm hoping that eventually we will see some auteur put forth such a gem. Maybe not exactly like House, but at least similar in its sort of and just how surprising it is, how fresh it feels. I would have loved to be there in the late 70s watching this, because I don't know how it would have felt to those audiences, if I'm being honest. I have no idea how they would have. Apparently it was a modest success, though. The film.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah.
It was,
Like,
it
well,
was
it
like a
didn't make-
financial success,
Yeah.
but like critically panned, which
Yeah,
is not surprising at all.
No, not surprised. It didn't make Jaws numbers or anything,
No.
but it was financially successful.
Yeah.
So I guess Toho was correct in that sense. They backed the right horse. But yeah, I guess because of its lack of any kind of critical praise at the time, it sort of just faded into obscurity until recently. But I'm really happy that it exists. I'm happy that I own it. And I'm happy that we're spreading the word on it. If you haven't seen it, and it seems like it's up your alley, definitely watch it. Like, watch it with your dorm mates. Watch it while on some kind of illicit substance that I will never actually say that you should do, because that would be illegal. But anyway, what do you think about Houseu? Any other final thoughts about it?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to touch on was there's this very stark divide in the film where for the first like 40 or 50 minutes of it, there's not a lot of actual horror going on. The first 40 or 50 minutes, it's literally just like, it's like a slice of life, like coming of age thing. It's just the girls just like hanging around the house. You get to see their cute little interactions. You know, they're having a good time. And then like the last half of the movie, everything just springs out at you at once, and
exactly, like,
and so all hell breaks loose.
Oh, man.
And yeah, the whole time I was watching this, I was trying to think of how I was going to be able to sort of describe the effects of this movie, which is something I've just never seen anything similar to it. It's
before or since.
Yeah,
honestly.
it's I don't know. It's like someone took like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon and then just superimposed that over like the live action film. It's really hard to describe.
Really weird.
Even if you don't want to watch the whole movie, just look up the clips online. Look up the clips of the piano eating the girl on YouTube. It's there. It's one of my favorite scenes in a horror movie.
It's pretty amazing.
Ever. It's so absurd.
It's so absurd. Yeah. Actually, I want to talk about a little bit about the sounds in this movie, because there are a lot of good use of sound work in it that kind of like increases the sort of how weird it is, how off-putting it is. Whenever they have like this, as well as the music as well. I think the music is really well done in this film. In the first half, you have a lot of what sounds like 60s era pop music.
Yeah, like things you'd hear in like a commercial.
Yeah,
like really quaint, like pop rock.
And then it's mirrored with like these sort of exaggerated commercial aesthetics that the director brings in through the first half. Yeah, it's very quaint pop rock. Some of which is written apparently by the guy, the Watermelon Man, in this movie.
Yeah.
Cool. Apparently he does some of the music in it, but there is a sort of a motif theme in the film that keeps popping up in different contexts. Like, you have the same tune being played jauntily, and then in some scenes you have it being haunting. And then they keep repeating it. They have different versions of it. I find that to be a really effective use of a motif. And I just really, I think both visually and sound-wise, the movie just kind of really just, it separates itself from its contemporaries and from anything made today. It's one of a kind. It really is. And that's really all I wanted to say about it. And if you were done as well, Andrew, I say we.
Yep, I'm good there.
All right.
Again, big recommend from us.
Big recommend. Watch
it.
House. 1977's House. There's another horror movie from the 80s also called House. That's not the one. Houseu, 1977. Watch it. It might expand your mind a little. We'll see. What else do we have on the list here, Andrew?
All right, we wanted to touch on an album. We're coming back.
An album?
Yeah.
Boy, we haven't done that in a while.
No. The new Vampire Weekend, Father of the Bride.
Well, yeah, we both listened to it. It's still right up there on the charts, so we figured that we might as well talk about it. We've been meaning to do it.
Even if it weren't on the charts, Vampire Weekend is such a culturally relevant band.
Oh yeah,
that,
absolutely. Absolutely, they're one of the few.
Worth noting.
They're one of the few bands, like in the traditional sense, that are still making waves in any sense. And I respect them for it. And when preparing to listen to this album, I actually went through all of their previous work. The self-titled. I went through Contra, and I listened to Modern Vampires of the City for the first time all the way through as well. I don't think I've listened to either Contra or Modern Vampires all the way through, but I was always a big fan of their self-titled, and I think that's still kind of stands as their best work.
Oh, that's one of my favorite albums of all time.
It's really,
like
really good.
the impact that had when it came out. It's no surprise that these guys are like one of the only bands from that sort of 2000s indie boom that are still
that's
kicking around.
Exactly, still kind of pumping things out, and people are still like excited. Because really, what they did back then was very different. I mean, it was the 2000s were a time where there was a lot of kind of cultural pastiche, kind of postmodern in that sense, but they were really the ones that did it in a way that combined things like, I guess, indie music and Baroque pop, and then even like Afro beats and other types of Caribbean type music, and kind of combined it in a way that was somehow actually coherent and terrific.
Yeah, very, very palatable.
Because you never expect these genres to mix in any kind of way, and you're not even a fan of most of these genres.
I'm not.
But somehow they managed to sell it. I don't know. And to me,
it's just good songwriting. That's
is.
really what it boils down to.
That's something that I think has...
They kept it short. They kept it sweet.
Absolutely.
It's poppy, but not like obnoxious.
Yeah. Koenig has a good ear for melodies and hooks and all that. And I think that carries over to this album to an extent, even if I didn't really care for it as much as the others, which we'll get into a little more as to why. But I do feel like they get a lot of ire as well, and I think it's kind of unjustified. A lot of people kind of bring up the cultural appropriation thing when kind of looking at their music and how it sort of utilizes these elements, these riffs, these beats from Caribbean music.
Well, which was really strange because these things have been like in like the modern palette since fucking Paul Simon put out Graceland in the 80s.
And he was
like
met with similar.
This argument has been like so just driven into the ground.
Right.
I'm willing to just dismiss it out of hand.
Yeah, and Peter Gabriel too also had a pretty big career of doing that after Genesis, and I think he's actually even directly referenced in one of the albums as well.
Right, because these artists, they've never like tried to hide where this influence is coming from. They're not trying to like erase the culture that they're borrowing from.
Right.
They wear these influences on their sleeve.
They
if
do.
you listen to Ezra talk,
he clearly has a big respect for it.
He does, like especially on the new album. He did an interview where he sort of went track by track and explained the influences on said tracks, and he's more than willing to give direct shout outs.
It never feels like he's mocking these cultures or in any way. Like he's not making, I don't know.
No, it's a genuine interest that happens to carry over.
He's not making like Turning Japanese or something, a song like that, which is just basically just being fueled entirely by stereotypes.
He's not Led Zeppelin stealing riffs from obscure black bluesmen.
And just pretending like it's their riffs, that kind of thing. And he's not making fun of them, and he's showing a good amount of respect for him, and he's kind of putting his own stamp on them. To a certain extent, maybe some songs more so than others, because I know that what's the name of that song, Cabana thing?
What?
The song that's like three words and they all start with C's.
Cape Cod, Kwasa Kwasa.
I was close. Okay. Anyway, that song I think actually lifts a riff directly from like some kind of
Copacabana.
That's my favorite Vampire Weekends. But that actually directly lifts a riff from some older Caribbean song. But at the same time though, it's still like it's all utilized well. I don't really see it, and I'm not even gonna say that that's not what they're doing. Like maybe somebody else could solve in this, but I really don't feel like the ire met for their use of these different kind of cultural influences. I don't think it's justified. But speaking of which, they do bring in a lot of these influences and different ones as well into this new album, Father of the Bride, in a slightly different context. I don't think there's as many I don't know if there's as many of these influences kind of combined, but there are definitely some. And I do think that, well, first of all, what'd you think of it, Andrew? Let's get into that.
As far as their discography goes, I think it is one of the weaker albums, which is not so much a commentary on this album as it is how good the other ones were. With that being said, this one, it's like 18 tracks long. It is very bloated.
There's a lot of fat.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem.
It's not different. The tracks don't differentiate themselves enough to sort of justify the runtime.
Yeah.
I do like that there are new tones being added to the palette. Ezra here, there's like a new twang to his voice, his guitar work. It's definitely the most like American album.
I would say that either the songs where he has the twang, especially the songs where he has the duets with Karen Heim.
Danielle
Heim. I have no idea where Karen came from. Danielle Heim. I think those songs, those duets, are actually, I think, some of the high points of the album, just because I like their voices and how they interact. And there is a lot of twang in those songs. Those are probably highlights for me. But keep going.
Right. That was my big thing coming in on this album, is how we was going to handle the instrumentation. This is their first album without Rostam Batmanjeej, I think is how you pronounce his last name, who handled the bulk of the songwriting, contributed immensely for the last 3 albums.
Yeah.
And I think he sort of he handled that nobly.
His sort of talent for, like I said, melodies and hooks has definitely not dissipated in the, what's it been, 6 years?
Yeah, something
Jeez.
absurd. Yeah.
God, with this rate, it'll be like 12 years by the time the next one comes out. But I don't think it's dissipated in the last 6 years. I think that's still pretty strong, and I think that's there's plenty of good hooks in this album. I can think of the song Harmony Hall has a pretty good hook to it. That's sort of reminiscent of maybe even an old Peter Gabriel song. I like the song Unbearably White, where he is sort of taking the piss on sort of the image of his band, what it is to some people, some of his haters. And there's a little bit of answering to the haters on this album. I don't really know how much of it works for him, and maybe I think that is also an issue. Some of the lyrical content of him addressing the haters, and him trying to be a little more political, but really to no meaningful avail, in my opinion. I think perhaps that might be a weak point, but I do think that there are a lot of good. None of the songs are unlistenable, for instance, and I think there's a good vibe. But the vibe perhaps is a little too consistent. There's not enough. There's none of that really kind of variety and youthful energy that's sort of in those early albums, like the self-title,
to me,
or in Contra, or in Modern Vampires. Which, go on.
Yeah, okay. So for me, this album is as though somebody took Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girl and just stretched it out over like a full fucking album.
Yeah,
that's the singular tone you're gonna get from
it's
this.
It's like that video on YouTube where it's Justin Bieber's Baby, but it's like 1,000 times slowed down, and then it's like this weird, like sort of ethereal drone experience. It's like that, except not at all like that. Because
you just want to like name.
I just
name
wanted
drop that.
I just like that video.
All right.
Yeah, because you were talking about one song being extended. That's it, literally happening. That's I can see what you're saying though about that song kind of being repeated in its sort of feel throughout this album. It's a very, I would call it, it's a very, what do you call it? It's a very Whole Foods feel in many ways.
Yeah, this album is just middle-aged, well, not middle-aged, I don't know, upper class, late 20-something white dudes on a boat in a summer. They're in their boat shoes, they're drinking craft beer, chatting about the new fucking Kings of Leon record or whatever.
Well, geez, let's not insult this record.
No, that's not a reflection of the content. That's the vibe. That's the vibe of the record.
Is Kings of Leon still like making records? I legitimately don't know.
No, but I don't know what the kids are listening to these days. That's why there was such a gap there.
I don't think they're listening to bands now. It's all Billie Eilish.
Fine, they're talking about that. They're talking about that Ray Schmurmer double album that came out not that long ago.
It was a triple album, buddy.
Jesus, that's bleak.
Yeah, it's a bleak landscape in some ways. I did like they introduced a few new elements though in this album. There was what song was it that had the sort of flamenco beat?
That was one of my favorite. That's Sympathy.
That was a really good one, and I really enjoyed that.
Really good Latin tinge, and then there's like that really spicy like jazz bass breakdown like right in the middle.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a really good one too. Yeah, I really do think there are some good songs here. There's a lot of salvage. We're both fans of Sunflower as well. The sort of riff at the beginning.
Oh yeah, the really like proggy like bass runs. Yeah, and you got like the really weird scatting going on.
It's pretty good. It's pretty decent. That's where I feel like their sense of experimentation is paying off. Now there are certain times like I remember an instant in the album where he tries to introduce autotune, which I don't think worked very well. But with experimentation, there's always going to be some failing, I guess. And I also feel like there probably wasn't enough of that. A lot of the instrumentation, a lot of the production was a lot of bare bones stuff was here, kind of amongst all the stuff that we're talking about that sort of stands out, because we're talking about 16 songs here. To me, there's not much of a variety.
I think it was 18.
Holy hell, it's 18 songs, and there's not enough variety, I think, to justify that length. To me, like something like Modern Vampires has like a lot of variety and like richness to the sounds in the album, a lot of like different kind of a lot of different layered production choices that kept me interested. I mean, it also wasn't 18 songs, so that probably helped a little bit, but I do think that maybe a little more work could have been put into sort of the richness of the production, and maybe cut a few songs. I don't know.
The best songs on this, like the ones we mentioned, are the ones that sort of break the homogeny.
Yeah. I mean, not the, and like I said, even the ones like I don't think there's anything that's truly unlistenable here, and I think that it's, and I think the album as it stands is good. It just isn't. It does not reach the heights of their discography previous to this, and I probably would put it at the bottom. I would probably, if I was to real quick, if I was to sort of put them in order, I would say self-titled, then for me Modern Vampires, then Contra, which are both close, and then this one. And like you said, that's no insult really on the album itself. That's more of a compliment of their discography as a whole. And as a couple of white guys, we're largely pretty we like it.
Yeah, if you can't trust us on anything else, you can trust a couple of white dudes on their opinions on indie music. Yeah,
it's true. It's true. I listened to this album Chipotle. I self-actualized like 3 times. It was great. But did you have anything else to say about Vampire Weekend's Father of the Bride?
Nothing to say about this. I do want to give a shout out to something I started a very long time ago, and I have to go back and finish. And in between, the 6-year gap between Vampire Weekend albums, Ezra put out
I literally forgot.
Yeah, an anime with Jaden Smith called Neo Yokio that I can't hard recommend it just because I hadn't actually finished it, but from what I remember, it was pretty good.
I mean,
if you like,
I think it was fine.
The bands, you're probably gonna like the anime. And then also I want to give a shout out to Ezra's Twitter. He's killing it. #1 in the game.
Oh, he's always been killing it.
Untouchable Twitter game.
His Twitter game is it's on fleek.
If you can find it, find the screenshots of his beef with Riff Raff on Twitter. That was peak internet for me, I think.
Yeah, no, it really was all downhill from there.
Yeah.
Really, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. But great, all right. So we give Ezra Koning's Twitter a 10. But what would you numerically, if you were to rate this, what would you give it?
Strong 7.
I'd give this a decent strong 6.
Yeah. And
I was not copying Fantano because we technically recorded a version of this review before his review.
I haven't even watched that yet.
Yeah, no, but it's also 6. I haven't seen it.
That's fair.
Yeah, but anyway, that's I guess that does it though for us tonight. We went through a lot today, my lord. But
our triumphant return.
Our triumph. Yeah, I'd like to apologize for our small long break that we kind of had here. It was through no fault of our own. We have different responsibilities, and this is our triumphant return. I feel like I feel pretty good. I feel like we're going to be going pretty strong, at least for the time being. After this, for at least a while, and hopefully you will follow us through this journey. And in the meantime,
you can follow us on Twitter at TotalPodForever.
That's right.
I am back on Instagram.
Triumphant return.
My social media fast did not last quite as long as I'd like. You can find me now.
It always comes back.
At Parlance of the Times.
Yeah, that's
one long spiel, no spaces, no underlines, and you can find Nick.
And while you're searching for that confusing name, you could also look for me on Instagram, McGetnoided. That's MCGETT_noided. And feel free to follow us on all your podcasting aggregates. Wherever you get your pods, we're there.
And YouTube. We're now on YouTube.
Exactly. We're freshly onto YouTube, so if for whatever reason that's an easier place for you to navigate, then I highly recommend you go there because we are there. Anyway, anything else, Andrew, for the people out there?
Hope to see you guys very soon. Or sooner than last time, at least.
Yes. I think those are good standards. Yep. Anyway, you have a nice night, guys. Bye-bye.